You can make a recommendation on it, so you can send it as summer school policy, but I really do just kind of look at, like, so we think about 2 ways, like, the changes, and like, is something, mission critical, is just kind of like extra shit, so, I think so.
I actually think going summer school policies.
Well, maybe that
Haven't
answers, maybe
attended
that
summer
answers the
school
question,
myself.
too. I think it's a good thing to have.
That's just.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I have, is there like a pen? An extra pen?
I don't want.
Yeah, I have an extra one. I have like 4.
Oh, thank you, yeah. Just make sure you remind me.
You got it?
I'll get it.
Thank
I
you.
gotta find a staple thing. Anyone else need a copy?
Oh, is it one of these? I already have these printed.
Oh.
Oh,
perfect.
Oh, what policy is it?
It's code of conduct.
Oh,
Code
yeah.
of conduct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
What are you?
I think what I sent you all was the bullying. I didn't send you anything for racial and ethnic equity, and I'll give this to you all too. I printed,
I'm so much younger.
Thank you.
Gosh.
Are we gonna be cramping your style if we move that way?
No, not at all.
I don't see my person who's gonna do summer school, so it might need to be tabled.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll just do it next month.
That's fine.
Alright, so it's always, yeah, it's 5:40, it's always interesting. Have we been just live right now? Okay, so we've been live for a while. So, call to order, and I'll take a motion to approve the agenda for this policy committee. Motion, I guess I second as chair. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
All opposed, no. Abstention, motion passes. Approval of minutes, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second, all those in favor, motion second. Any discussion? No discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Hi.
All opposed say no, abstention, motion passes. First, we'll go to the racial, ethnic, and equity policy.
Yes, so this is a quick update from this policy. Was passed last summer-ish or spring, I don't even know, maybe it was in the spring. And so within that were, Carolina wanted to see the regulations. And so within that policy, we also have, it also says that we have an advisory council that assists with developing those regulations. So because this was passed at the end of the year, the advisory council didn't start meeting until August or September again, right? So we are working with them. We have a draft regulation. The council is currently providing feedback. And we hope to have by the February 1st policy meeting, those regulations drafted. So it's a short update with the racial and ethnic equity policy regulations.
Okay.
The more substantial policy that does have regulations that have already been in effect is our bullying and harassment policy. So these are internal processes that building leaders have access to that they've been using, and it's actually been working out really well, which is nice. So the first kind of piece here, you can see the definitions, which come directly from the policy so that folks understand who is involved and what are the different roles that go with that. And then it's got step-by-step processes of what you need to do. Additionally, our office has developed templates for folks. So there's a bullying and harassment report template. So what that report should look like when they submit it, and that is all in your packet as well. I developed a sample report so that they can see like, okay, I'm doing this investigation. What should my final report look like? And then also just some extra resources around questions that they should be asking when doing investigations. So what questions could they be asking students or witnesses, making sure that those questions aren't biased, that they provide, they're not just yes and no, and can provide like substantial information in terms of them doing their investigation.
Just in the sample report, it states a notation about a third person objective.
Yes.
Can you tell me why that would be?
Absolutely. So when we get a report, we don't want the person doing the investigation to be biased or have bias influence in there, right? So we don't want the report to say student A was acting really dumb and then, whatever, like that objective language. So I always find, and I've been a trained investigator in Title IX and EEO for a while now, and so I've always been trained to write third person. So as if I don't even know the person, right? So usually I would refer to that person by their first and last name and then refer last name throughout, just to make sure that I'm covering my biases and that I'm not bringing something in there that doesn't need to be in the report.
Makes sense.
Of course.
I have a question that's maybe not necessarily on agenda, it's probably more on the racial, ethnic equity policy.
Yeah, no problem.
I've been meeting with students on, for ethnic studies, with them
Yes.
advocating for ethnic studies.
Yes.
I think this ties into 4.1, so I'm not necessarily going.
No, yes, you're good.
Would you mind, as someone that is interested in what their advocacy efforts, like where that stands, a little bit of contextual history?
Yeah, so I will be very upfront that I don't have all of the context. Dr.
That's
Onion
fine.
has a lot of good context, and so she's out this week, but when she's back, I'm sure she'd be happy to send you all an email with that context. But we have been brought into the conversations with the work happening out of our school PPD, which I'm sure that's what you're referring to as well. We met with the committee and just let them know. We also met with folks in teaching and learning, just let them know like what is going on in terms of civics education, social studies, ethnic studies, and then they're piloting, I'm sure you all know, African American studies as well. So those are all things that have been coming up. And so we went and just let them know that that's what's happening here. And then a couple of those students are also part of our Respect conferences. So I'm not sure if you all are aware the students that were honored at the school board. So those students as well, they double dip in kind of those leadership roles. So they brought some of that up at their own schools as well. I know there's more like historical context in terms of ethnic studies here at PPSD. I unfortunately don't have that knowledge, but like I said, happy to have Dr. Onye reach out to you with that piece. But that's how we've been engaged with our school PPD thus far.
And when I met with those folks yesterday, I had mentioned that there were some schools that were doing something like that. So
Yes.
was classical one of them?
Classical, don't quote me, but I believe it's classical, Mount Pleasant, and one other one, but our teaching and learning folks would be able to give us that information concretely.
And not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's
Just-
totally okay.
yeah,
No, I just know because we've been in the conversations, and so
Yeah.
I know I remember for a fact classical, and because I know who's teaching it over there, and I want to say I remember for a fact Mount Pleasant, but I can't remember. There was a couple other ones that are also doing it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll follow up for efficiency's sake, might as well just.
No, it's great. Yeah, we've all been connected and trying to, just let them know what we've been up to and stuff like that. So yeah, totally.
Any questions?
In terms of the policy update for the 4.1 racial and ethnic equity, I don't see.
I didn't give you anything on that policy. Yeah, because we just don't have it yet.
We don't have.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's still in the.
Yes,
infancy
it's still
stage.
it's
Very
still being drafted with our council. And so once we're hoping to have that finalized by the February 1st policy meeting.
Okay.
Yes, that's our goal.
I look forward to it.
Hopefully earlier, but the goal for now, we're trying not to be too ambitious.
No voting action on there, so we'll go to the school board code of conduct policy. I had just sent over language around attendance that we could add in. What is the best way to sort of do that? In terms of sharing it with folks here?
Share with people here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just
No,
sent
that's
it.
fine. I can actually print out
things that-
copies right now because there's only a couple people.
Okay.
We can do it like that.
And, because we're kind of like workshopping it.
Thank you, folks. Have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good night. See you tomorrow.
She's gonna I just think that we can take them if we find some,
I can see it.
And
And I can hear it.
go over.
And I know. So 4.4 is being tabled at the next month.
Let's do 4.3 first and then, because James, you said that there's no staff.
Colleen was supposed to be here. I don't see her though. I
Okay.
think she might, sometimes people get tied up in other things. So I'll reach out to her though tomorrow.
Okay. Was there anything that you know that we should, I mean, other than the context of private?
I mean, it's out of my wheelhouse, summer school, the under the academic team, so when I,
Yep.
well, I have knowledge, I don't want to speak to that specific policy. But we can table it. Summer's a ways off.
Funny thing is, I'll be here sooner than you think. At least that's how I feel about the end of 2023.
The older you get, the more it just gets quicker.
So I guess as we mentioned, 4.3 while we're waiting, this is just sort of a follow-up. The recommendation was the consequences aspect of it. Started moving that. Were you able to already format that? Oh, you're great. Okay. This is context. And then one second.
Thank you.
So, a pretty standard code of conduct policy for, I think, not only Providence School Board, really any appointed legislative body that was trying to adhere to a professional manner. This was drafted here. I think it would be helpful for school boards going in the future. There's language around attendance that's highlighted in green. Thank you so much for including that in. And pretty much stuff that we already do, and we want to make sure. I know there was a time, at least I was told, but way before I was on this board, that it'd be tough for the board to get formed and stuff like that. Things go like that in the past, long history. So I think that this sort of policy covers even for new board members coming up, like making sure that that you attend meetings, right? If you're going to sign up, making sure that you attend meetings, unless obviously you're sick or stuff like that. We monitor a report of who's on there. There was a recommendation around consequences for that. And I'm okay with that. I do believe the board would have the action, hopefully we never got to that, to do a censure if we wanted to, or a resolution stating that we wouldn't agree with if someone had so much of an egregious action before we get there, but hopefully we never have to do that. I will stop there. This is a policy that I drafted as a workshop type aspect. Happy to take any questions on the policy.
I have a couple. How you doing, everybody? Really quick, so
Can you identify yourself for the?
yes, Tyrell Stevens. Really quick, so I think that this is a policy that we do need. I would say I do think it's a bit vague and subjective in some areas. Like when we get to the point where it says general belief, it says members shall act with honesty, transparency, and in the best interest of students in the community. I think that it should sort of state sort of such as, like some examples. Then it says members shall treat each other, staff, students, public with dignity, respect, refusing personal attacks. I think it should say such as. I think that we don't sort of understand it. The language is a bit vague. I don't know if we should sort of cite some examples of exactly what that actually means, because what we don't want is for like board members to think that something is sort of offensive, but somebody sort of just speaking their mind or trying to prove a point in a certain situation. So I would just say if we can sort of cite some examples, I think we'll definitely be good there. And then with what you just added, which I think is good, and I think this is what I advocated for, was the absences.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we can sort of say like a certain amount of absences that is unexcused or something can sort of result in executive session. I don't want it to be sort of like we come up with, well, someone misses one board meeting, say they just didn't want to go, and we just sort of discipline them off the top. Like, I think we should sort of give them sort of like at least two, like if there's two unexplained absences that doesn't sort of, or the board doesn't sort of feel comfortable with, maybe that should sort of result in then a discussion taking place with the school board. Now, I would say, I know we took out the consequences for removed from the board, but I would say I think a censor, or like you said, a resolution could be added as well. I would agree to something like that, so the community knows that the board is in fact being accountable to the community. So I did grow on the policy. I do think that it's something, definitely after speaking to some community members, something that we need. I would just say if we can just cite some sort of some examples of exactly what does it mean to sort of violate the policy. And then also for the absences portion, if it's okay by the committee, if we can sort of say if there's 2 or 3 unexplained absences, it could result in a discussion with the executive committee, with the school board, things like that. So
I appreciate all of that. So I think if we add consequences, we look back at consequences, if we just put a period at may range from formal warning to censure, and put a period there and leave out the language recommendation for move from the board, I think that that's pretty much what would answer that. So if there is a consequence.
correct. Accountability, yes.
Yeah,
I
accountability.
think in terms, I agree, there should be some type of accountability for attendance, but I think because, it should be defined, if you're defining, a timetable, an amount of absences, you should define a timetable as well. So if it's, so many absences within, a school year, or, a term or semester, so I think we should even more define it just to be more clear.
With 25%?
Or put a percentile, yeah, and something that's going to be more across the board, just put a percentile or.
What would be 25%?
I know.
25% of what-
You might, can I add something?
Yeah.
James Scott, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for the camera. See me? You might be better off having it vague though, because like things like absences sometimes happen for a reason. So and you can kind of determine that standard threshold. But it could also be like, I know as a board, you're doing some work with the Council of Great City Schools that if you're going to continue to workshop this, that could be some of the discussion you have too with them, just an idea.
Yeah.
And then I was also thinking, we've been having a lot of discussions about doing the regulations with this. I think if we kept part of this big and then we made a separate regulation sheets, that could be somewhere where we define those specific measures. And that way too, if we decide to change the days, the whole policy doesn't need to be changed, you just change the regulation and it doesn't have to go through the whole approval.
Thank you for that.
I don't know what that means. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
no. So, policies, the policy, what you're looking at now, that's like what's going on the school board, passing the school board. And the regulation is like the how-to manual of enforcement of the policy. And that doesn't really have to go through all the hoops afterwards, but it's just how to enforce the policy.
Got it.
It's a distinction the chairwoman who's not with us, I asked us to be more cognizant of. Because a lot of our policies, because obviously, these are temporary seats, people come and go, and even the district level, we come and go. Some of the policy are blend of like the implementation of the policy, so she asked us to be more cognizant of that. And Andrea in her role has done some nice work of starting to separate some of these policies and regulations. I think it's a good thing for us.
And also, since it's 2 meetings to approve it, we could add the such as on certain things if we wanted to.
You can edit up until the second passage.
Yeah.
Like once the second passage drafts off and it's final.
Because I'm not opposed.
So how often do policies not sort of specify, maybe James, or you may know, doesn't sort of cite examples on them. And normally the regulations take place. How often does that sort of happen?
I don't know, before my time, it seems to be like department by department, some do, some don't. But while I've been here, I've been trying to make it so we're getting in like a pattern of always having the regulations with the policy. So the work-based learning and CTE, that'll be passing, well, hopefully passing the next full board meeting, those have the regulations with them.
Okay. Well, you guys are the committee, you guys make the decision. I don't know too much about, me personally as a board member, I don't know too much about the regulations, anything like that. I would say I would love to just cite them on the policy, but we can also have conversations about if it would probably be better with the regulations. And it explains exactly what it means. So but either way, it's up to y'all.
And we might be able to come together and just add some language before the 13th too. Because I agree with what you're saying, Mrs. Stevens.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
This one's a little different because like you know, usually for our guest here from our parent leadership, oftentimes a policy, review may be requested by the board, but it oftentimes starts at the departmental level here. So like, the equity policies would come from the equity office, the summer school policy come from the academic team. This is a little different because it's a school board. It's kind of the board, police, the boards. This one came actually from the board. And so it's different origin point.
Yeah.
How long would the regulations take if you was to sort of refuse to create a regulation sheet?
Not long. If you guys like give me the information and guidelines you want, I could have it done in a couple of days. It wouldn't take long.
And does that have to go through like an approval process? I'm sorry, I can't see.
No,
I just
no,
can't
it's
this
fine.
way.
It doesn't have to. You guys can look at it, but it's not something that has to go through the whole board.
Now, does this policy have to sort of, does the regulations sort of have to sort of abide by like this policy? Will it hold the same
Yes.
weight?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's a good idea. That's probably
Yeah,
the best way to go.
policy's a general guideline, and like the regulations sort of internally how we make it work. So this regulation, should work out. It's really the board writing that for the board,
Correct.
and the solicitor have to review it.
Correct.
So for approval, we'll be adding all the language in green for attendance. We'll be adding back in consequences. We put a period after warning to censure, and not include the language or even recommendation for moving from the board. Is that, and we'll have regulations around the specifics of certain actions. Seems like that sums up all of the
I have a
conversation.
question.
Yeah.
About the absences. So are the absences just for the general school board meetings, or does that also include subcommittees?
For this purpose, is a good question. For this purpose, am tackling board meetings.
So if there are unexplained absences, I'm not on the board, but if it's unexplained absences that are problematic, I don't feel like it needs to be a large number,
Yeah.
right?
And I would say during my
Because I feel like I want y'all here when I come to a meeting, like,
Correct.
I want to know everyone's here, and if the language is discussing unexplained absences, then I think the tolerance should be really low for that. Like, it's not, if you have somewhere you have to be, you have somewhere you have to be, that's an explained absence, right? But if you're just not feeling it or decide not to come, right, then that's problematic for me.
Yeah, and I would say during my time, I believe everyone's been pretty, letting go, like, hey, I'm sick. Hey, I got my daughter's birthday party.
Right, those are all, right, those are excused.
Yeah.
So I feel like,
I definitely take that,
May I
Yeah.
offer a question, plus one to what Aubrey asked? And I would also maybe encourage you to think about considering these committee meetings as well as the regular board meetings, only because this is where you're actually doing a lot of the work. I'm not sure, again, we had other discussions about, how aware the public is of all of the work that you guys do. And I think some folks just know about like the regular main meeting. But something that I learned and often surprises other parents when we talk to them is that a lot of stuff is kind of decided already at the committee level, or at least recommended and discussed at the committee level by the time it gets to that meeting. And so I would say that the attendance for your committees is equally important because you're doing some more of the nitty gritty work.
Can I add an amendment then? Because I agree. So commitment to duty, members are expected to regularly attend all scheduled board and assigned committee meetings.
Yes.
I think that would then, that should take care of it.
Then should it be one unexplained absence would be a formal warning, next will go before.
Well, let me, so the first one, we're good with that, assigned committee, and then you're going back to accountability for absences. So it reads, excessive unexplained absences may lead to review and possible corrective action. Excessive could be one. I guess that could be a regulation, but,
I think we
Yeah.
need to define better, as Mr. Stevens mentioned,
yeah,
to better define what that excessiveness would mean.
and that could be a regulation added to the board instead of specifying here, and keeping this,
Probably your options are limited because it's a public office, so you can't necessarily remove someone, but
No.
you might check the bylaws, you could maybe drop someone from a committee or a chairmanship or something like that, if they're not in school board. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think about absenteeism a lot.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any language, if I remember, about any removal once folks are appointed.
Well, I think the president just holds the weight. He can remove who he wants to remove and appoint.
Is there like language around like president removing?
There's
Yeah.
not, but I think when it says that the president has authority to appoint committee chairs, that then gives him the authority to remove as well, but maybe it's something we can edit.
Yeah, you guys
But I
know.
think he holds the authority to remove or appoint who he wants.
Okay. So we added committee members. I think we'll go back and we'll think about what excessive absence can mean. But I think for the framework, in terms of, we've never had this before. I'm comfortable moving along, knowing that we have 2 other passes and we'll have regulations added to the committee. So I'll look for motion to approve.
I'd actually like
Yeah.
to make one
Yeah.
suggestion too in my research. I see that, an action item that it states that no private action will be comprised of the board administration without without attempting to resolve it through the president first. So in other words, all complaints received personally would go directly to the president, and then he.
In terms of the reporting?
Yes.
Yeah, so reporting, it has to the executive committee. So that would encompass the president as well, but I think it would also allow the other 2 folks, the vice president, secretary, to be there.
Very
Because what if there's a time that the president is
well. That's
not here? We hope that this doesn't. Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah.
So it says compliance with laws, confidentiality requirements. So that the superintendent will ensure that all.
I'm sorry, which one? Oh, the
In the
last
back.
one?
Yep, in the back. It says that compliance with laws, confidentiality requirements, that the superintendent will ensure that all PPSD employees and all PPSD contractors, et cetera, he shall, in the event that is violated, he will report it to the board as soon as possible. So really quick, because this is sort of mentioning the community as well, and making us sort of be accountable to the communities, should it not only be the superintendent, but should there sort of be a process where community members, if something's unlawful that one of us do, are able to just report that directly to somebody in the board leadership and not just the superintendent?
Yeah, I think, I'm trying to think. I think, yeah.
I think in your bylaws, it says like HR complaints have to go to us first,
Okay.
because what happens if it goes to you first, and then it ends up in front of the board, it becomes a conflict.
Correct. So should we put language in there that they shall report it to the Human Resource Office for Providence or PTSD, or would that be considered the superintendent?
He's the designated superintendent, so it's like,
So how would say if the community sees this, they're gonna be like, how do we get in touch with the superintendent? Where do we go?
fair point.
And I also say this is a board relationship with board. I think for your point, we have, I think.
Because really quick, it could be like, could file a complaint or something like that to the Human Resources Office or something like that. So the community is aware that there is accountability we can sort of go to, and it's not sort of like just a relationship between the board and PPSD. Also, the community is like, I didn't like the way they spoke to me at the school board meeting. I want to file a complaint. Where do they go? You get what I'm saying? Where shall they go?
I think I would say, let's say there's an incident, unfortunate incident, where a board member is offensive, disrespectful to a committee member. I think there's avenues where we're public officials, and right, so there's the open comment section, and I think it's amongst the board, if we find something where, okay, why would you do that to a community member? Then I think it would be on the board to police ourselves on that aspect. Be like, okay, we found out this egregious action that you took among a community member. We are going to now look at that because we violated the code of conduct. So it would be the board holding ourselves accountable.
Okay. Now, what if it's at a community event?
Then it would still be the same thing. It would be the aspect of we hear about it one way or the other. Because we all know there's nothing that stops a letter from a committee member to the board saying, I had this engagement activity, I disagree with X, Y, and Z. And then it would be upon the board, like, you did this to this person, to be able to have those conversations and think, we want.
So you don't think no language should be changed? You think that's?
Yeah, because I think if it's implemented, well, one, hopefully things like that never happen, but if it's implemented correctly, the board, if something situation happens, the board would then police itself.
And like, I think too, with some of the wording, like board members are different, because like technically the board only has powers, the board when you're gavelled in.
Correct.
And you're in session, so
Correct,
like,
correct.
that would make it different from like say, like a city council person. So if you're out at a community event, you're not necessarily there as a board member.
That
you're
makes
there
sense. That makes sense.
As Tyrell
Just
Stevens.
makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Those are all good questions. Okay. So I'll recap the language. We made an amendment to commitment. Well, one, we made the first amendment to add a language on attendance. We added an amendment for commitment of duty to include committee members. We have added back in consequences, but just erasing or even a recommendation for removal of the board. We will follow up with regulations that, our policy associate will follow up with regulations on this policy to give more guidelines, because I think that's important. But with all of that, I'll have a motion to pass, motion to approve. Motion, I'll second. Any discussion? No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Abstention. Motion passes. Thank you for that. The next agenda item is review of summer school policy. We do not have the staff member to be present, so
Colleen Van Brunt couldn't be here tonight. She was the one that was prepared to discuss this policy. But I think it might behoove us to hold it to next month and just bring it back to the same committee next month.
yeah, that's what I was gonna
Be 1 month closer to summer.
So we'll just have a motion. I'll entertain a motion table.
So moved.
Second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Abstention. Motion passes. Table. So adjourn the meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job running the meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night,
It's an
y'all.
interesting
Good night.
two-
Good night.
Good night.
all that